The silence in the bedroom cracked when Maya whispered, "2 years, David. 2 years of marriage, and you never touched me." Maya's voice trembled, half anger and half heartbreak, while Maya's braids clung damply to her cheeks from tears. David stood frozen near the tall window, the city lights spilling across David's espresso-toned skin. David's broad shoulders carried guilt, and David's eyes avoided Maya's gaze, as if her pain was unbearable. Maya's chest rose and fell in sharp bursts, grief burning against her deep mahogany skin. Maya said, "Do you even see me anymore, or am I just a shadow in your house?" David clenched David's fists, words strangled in David's throat. David wanted to speak, but fear bound him. The distance between Maya and David was not measured in steps, but in years of unspoken truths. That night, silence was no longer safety. Silence became a wound screaming louder than words. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, Maya's voice cracked with despair. "I begged you for pieces of yourself, David, but you built walls instead." Maya's words carried years of silence. David turned, city light shimmering on David's espresso skin, fists clenched at David's sides. David whispered, "I thought I was protecting you from me." Maya's laugh was bitter, sharp as glass. "Protecting me? You destroyed me." Maya's gaze pierced David, unguarded for once. David stepped forward, but Maya recoiled as if his nearness burned her. The room pressed down on them, two strangers bound by vows that once promised love but had become chains. The storm outside matched the storm within, each raindrop echoing the collapse of their marriage. David's voice finally broke. "I've lived with shadows since I was a boy. I didn't want to give you my darkness." Maya shook Maya's head, braids swaying as tears slipped down Maya's cheeks. "You don't get to decide what I can bear. You stole my choice." Maya's tone cracked, the sound of love breaking. David stepped forward, David's heart pounding as if it wanted out of David's chest. "I never touched you because I thought love meant protecting you, but it meant hiding," Maya whispered, "and I am the one left starving for a touch that never came." Lightning crashed outside, painting Maya and David's shadows larger and lonelier across the walls. Maya wiped Maya's tears roughly, anger rising. "Do you know what it feels like to be invisible in your own marriage?" David's breath caught, David's eyes finally locking with Maya's. "Every day I wanted you, Maya, but fear made me a coward." Maya laughed bitterly, her voice sharp. "Fear? You think fear excuses 2 years of silence, 2 years of a bed colder than a grave?" David's throat tightened, shame coiling in David's chest. "I didn't want to hurt you." Maya stepped closer, Maya's eyes blazing with fury. "And yet you did. You hurt me more with your silence than any truth ever could." Their shadows collided violently across the rain-smeared walls, storms raging within and without. The air thickened with unspoken confessions. David whispered, "I thought distance would protect us, but it destroyed us." Maya's lips trembled, rage softening into grief. "I waited for you to love me, David. I waited until waiting became my curse." David reached out, David's hand trembling short of Maya's skin. Maya closed Maya's eyes, Maya's breath sharp, Maya's body torn between stepping back and collapsing into David's arms. Lightning flashed, illuminating truth in their silence. Love had not died, only buried itself beneath years of pain. But the question roared like thunder. Could Maya and David still save it? Or was this night the death of everything they once dreamed? Morning light crept through half-drawn curtains, painting the room in muted gold. Maya sat at the vanity, staring at her reflection, eyes swollen from the storm of the night before. Maya whispered to herself, "What am I if I am not touched, not seen, not loved?" Her braids framed a face carved with grief, yet her posture carried stubborn pride. David leaned in the doorway, his shirt wrinkled, his espresso skin shadowed with exhaustion. David said softly, "Maya, I never stopped wanting you." Maya's jaw tightened, her gaze locked on the mirror, not on David. "Wanting me isn't the same as loving me," Maya replied. The air between them pulsed with truths, neither knew how to survive. Outside the storm had passed, but inside the ruins of their silence remained, daring them to face what was left. Later that day, Maya walked through the quiet kitchen, the sound of the refrigerator hum louder than words. Maya touched the cold countertop, her chest tightening with memories of meals eaten in silence. David entered, his footsteps hesitant, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. David said, "I don't know how to start again, Maya." Maya didn't look up, her eyes tracing the floor tiles like they held answers. Maya said, "You don't start again, David. You either show up now or you don't at all." The bitterness in her tone masked the yearning in her heart. David placed the mugs down, his hands trembling slightly. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee, but the bitterness of regret lingered stronger than the aroma. Maya sat on the porch in the late afternoon, watching raindrops evaporate from the wooden steps. Maya pulled her robe tighter, her body aching with the weight of 2 years of absence. David stepped outside, his hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on her profile. David said, "I didn't touch you because I thought my scars would stain you." Maya turned, her eyes sharp and wounded. "You don't get to decide how much I can carry, David." The silence that followed was louder than thunder. Maya's tears glistened, but her voice held steel. "I wanted your scars. I wanted all of you." David looked down, regret gnawing at his posture, as if the ground itself might swallow his shame. Evening shadows stretched long across the living room walls, as Maya lit a single candle on the table. The flicker painted her mahogany skin in hues of fire and sorrow. David sat across from her, his posture heavy, his espresso-toned hands clasped tight. Maya said quietly, "Do you know what it feels like to be married and untouched? It kills piece by piece." David's voice cracked as he answered, "I thought silence was protection, but it was poison." Maya's gaze locked on him, unflinching, fierce in its ache. "Then stop hiding behind fear, David. Either love me or let me go." The candle flame trembled, as if the fire itself feared the truth. Night wrapped the house in silence, broken only by the sound of Maya's uneven breathing. Maya lay on the edge of the bed, her body angled away, staring at the wall. David sat on the mattress behind her, his hands shaking as he hovered close without touching. David whispered, "I want to hold you, but I don't know if you'll let me." Maya closed her eyes, her voice low, fragile. "You waited 2 years to want me, David. What makes tonight different?" David's hand fell into the sheets, trembling. Maya's tears slipped quietly onto the pillow. The night carried their unspoken truths, pressing down heavier than the ceiling above them. The night deepened, and the tension inside the living room thickened like smoke that refused to leave. Maya paced the wooden floor, her silk robe swaying with every sharp turn, braids brushing against her tear-stained cheeks. Maya said, "I can't breathe in this silence anymore, David. 2 years of emptiness has crushed me." David leaned against the wall, his espresso skin bathed in shadow, arms crossed like a shield. David's voice was low but firm as he said, "I thought I was protecting us, but all I did was destroy us." Maya stopped, her eyes blazing, her mahogany skin glowing in the dim light of the single lamp. Maya's voice cracked as she said, "You don't get to decide what I need. You don't get to lock me out and call it love." David's jaw tightened, his fists flexing at his sides as he said, "And you don't understand the weight I carried, Maya. The fear of losing you kept me frozen." The air between them was electric, their breaths sharp, their words colliding like storms. Maya stepped closer, her face inches from David's, her eyes filled with fury and ache. Maya whispered, "If you were afraid of losing me, David, you should have touched me, loved me, held me, instead of letting me rot in your silence." David's chest heaved, and for the first time in years, David's eyes met hers with raw fire. David said, "Then teach me how to love you, Maya, before it's too late." The next morning, Maya stood by the window, her eyes fixed on the street below, sunlight pouring across her mahogany skin. David entered quietly, a cup of coffee in his hand. David said, "I don't want silence anymore." Maya turned, her expression unreadable. Maya said, You've said words before, David. Words mean nothing when actions stay empty. David set the cup down, his hands shaking slightly. David said, "Then I'll prove it, Maya. I'll break the walls I built." Maya's eyes softened for a moment, then hardened again. Maya whispered, "Don't promise me what you can't give." The tension lingered, fragile and sharp, a thin line between hope and despair. Maya left the house later that afternoon, walking briskly down the sidewalk, needing air away from walls heavy with memories. David followed a few paces behind, his footsteps echoing like unspoken confessions. Maya turned sharply, her braids swinging, her mahogany skin glistening under sunlight. Maya said, "Stop following me, David. You had 2 years to reach me, and now you chase when I'm gone." David's chest rose, his breath ragged. David said, "I can't let you walk away without fighting this time." Maya's eyes burned, her voice shaking. Maya said, "Fight for me now, David, or let me go forever." The street felt like a stage where pride battled longing. The confrontation spilled into the park where children's laughter once softened the world. Maya stood beneath a tree, her arms crossed tightly across her chest, her eyes blazing. Maya said, "You never held me, David. Not once in 2 years." David's voice cracked as he said, "I wanted to every night, Maya, but I drowned in fear." Maya stepped closer, her braids shifting in the breeze. Maya said, "Fear isn't love, David. Fear is selfish." David's eyes glistened, his voice breaking. David said, "I thought silence would keep us safe. I was wrong." The words hung heavy, cutting sharper than any blade. The argument carried into the night as Maya and David returned home, shadows stretching long across the hallway. Maya's voice rose, trembling. Maya said, "You killed me with silence, David." David pressed his hands to his face, his espresso skin slick with sweat. David said, "I was drowning in my own demons, Maya. I thought I was sparing you." Maya shook her head, her mahogany skin glowing beneath the lamp. Maya whispered, "You weren't sparing me. You were abandoning me." David lowered his hands, his eyes red, his voice hoarse. David said, "I don't want to abandon you anymore, Maya." The hallway swallowed their words, echoing like ghosts. The evening air was heavy as Maya stood near the dining table, hands pressed flat against the wood. David entered, his face pale, his body tense as though carrying something unbearable. Maya looked up, her eyes sharp with suspicion. Maya said, "There's something you've been hiding. I feel it in every silence." David froze, his espresso skin damp with sweat, his jaw trembling. David whispered, "Maya, the truth isn't simple." Maya's breath caught, her chest rising in sharp bursts. Maya said, "Then speak it before the silence kills me." David closed his eyes briefly, shoulders sagging, before meeting her gaze with haunted darkness. David said, "I wasn't just afraid, Maya. I was already broken when I came to you." Maya's voice dropped to a whisper, as fury trembled beneath it. Maya said, "Broken doesn't excuse abandonment." David stepped closer, his fists shaking at his sides. David said, "It wasn't abandonment, it was fear of being found out." Maya's eyes narrowed, suspicion burning deeper. Maya said, "Found out about what, David?" David's face twisted, his espresso-toned skin glistening under lamplight. David finally admitted, "Before us I was betrayed. She left me shattered, and I carried that ghost into our marriage." The silence cracked open like glass. Maya's tears spilled, not only for herself but for the ghost that lingered in David's shadow. Maya staggered back, gripping her robe tightly as if to shield her chest. Maya said, "So I've been punished for a ghost I never created." David's voice broke as David stepped forward. David said, "I didn't know how to love again. I built walls because I feared losing everything once more." Maya's face hardened, tears cutting down her mahogany skin like fire and salt. Maya said, "And in building walls, David, you destroyed us instead." David reached out, but Maya recoiled, her body trembling with rage and sorrow. The truth had come. but it carried the weight of 1,000 knives. David sank onto the edge of the couch, his head buried in his hands. David said, "I should have told you, Maya. I should have trusted you with the truth." Maya stood above him, her braids falling like a crown of defiance. Maya said, "Trust doesn't come after betrayal. It is what keeps love alive." David lifted his eyes, bloodshot and desperate. David said, "I wanted to love you, Maya, but I was haunted by her shadow." Maya's lips trembled as she whispered, "Then you never loved me. You loved the memory of someone who broke you." The words hit like stone, leaving David hollow. The house felt colder than the storm outside. Maya moved toward the window, rain streaks glistening under streetlight. Maya said, 2 years, David. I thought your silence meant I wasn't enough." David rose slowly, his espresso skin gleaming with sweat, his voice breaking. David said, "It wasn't you, Maya. It was me clinging to wounds I never healed." Maya pressed her palm against the glass, her reflection fractured by rain. Maya whispered, "Then maybe we were doomed from the start." David stepped behind her, voice raw. David said, "No, Maya. We still have tonight to rewrite everything." The truth had been spoken, but its shadow remained. The storm inside the house mirrored the storm in Maya's chest. Maya stood in the bedroom, her braids damp from restless pacing. Maya shouted, "You chained me to silence, David. You made me a ghost in my own life." David stepped closer, his espresso skin gleaming under lamplight, his chest rising with fury and grief. David said, "I was broken, Maya, but you were the only light I had left." Maya's hands trembled as she slammed them against her chest. Maya said, "Then why didn't you let me save you?" The words sliced the air like lightning. David's voice cracked as he shouted, "Because I didn't believe I deserved saving." Their voices collided, raw and unbearable, echoing against the walls like thunder. Maya's tears fell, but her voice rose higher, sharp with fury. Maya said, "I gave you my vows, David, and you gave me nothing but silence." David's shoulders shook, his espresso skin shining with sweat as he stepped forward. David said, "I gave you my fear, Maya, because it was all I had left." Maya's body trembled, her silk robe clinging to her as she whispered, "Fear doesn't hold me at night. Fear doesn't love me." David's eyes burned, his fists tightening before he reached out. David said, "Then let me love you now, Maya. Let me show you what I buried." The room seemed to tremble with the force of everything unsaid now breaking loose. David grabbed his chest as though the weight of years pressed down all at once. David said, "I failed you, Maya, but I can't let you go without fighting." Maya's braids brushed her cheeks as she shook her head fiercely. Maya said, "You don't get to decide now. I begged you every night in silence." David's voice cracked, his espresso-toned face raw with torment. David said, "I heard your cries in the dark, Maya. I hated myself every time I turned away." Maya's knees buckled, her hand gripping the edge of the bed as she whispered, "Then why, David? Why did you let me die inside us?" The room went still, their words vibrating like scars reopening. The fight turned into collapse. David fell to his knees in front of Maya, his espresso skin glistening with sweat, his eyes swollen with grief. David said, "I loved you all along, Maya. I was just too broken to reach for you." Maya gasped, stepping back, her mahogany skin shimmering with tears. Maya said, "Love without touch is still abandonment, David. You left me starving." David grabbed the hem of Maya's robe, his voice shaking. David said, "Then let me starve no more, Maya. Let me fight for you now." Maya's chest heaved, her hands hovering above him, torn between rage and surrender. The moment burned like fire about to consume them both. Maya collapsed into David's arms, her voice breaking with raw sobs. Maya said, "You killed me with silence, but I still love you, David." David's arms wrapped around her trembling frame, his espresso skin slick with tears and sweat. David said, "Then let me love you the way I should have." Their breaths collided, jagged and desperate, as if both had been holding them for years. The kiss did not come yet, but the tension pressed against them like a storm ready to break. Maya whispered, "If you fail me again, David, I won't survive it." David's voice shook, his promise etched into the night. David said, "I won't let you go, Maya. Not again. Not ever." The night was finally quiet, though silence no longer felt like a weapon, but like a fragile bridge. Maya sat at the edge of the bed, her braids falling loose across her shoulders, her mahogany skin glowing under the faint lamp. David sat beside her, his espresso skin damp from tears, his hands resting open as if surrendering. Maya said softly, "We broke each other, David. I don't know if we can fix what's left." David's eyes lowered, his chest rising slowly. David said, "I don't want perfect. I just want us, broken pieces and all." Maya's lips trembled, her gaze heavy with doubt. For the first time in 2 years, their bodies shared the same space, the same fragile breath, without walls between them. Morning light spilled into the room, golden and forgiving. Maya stood by the window, her hand pressed against the glass, watching the world outside move forward. David approached slowly, his shirt wrinkled, his espresso skin touched by morning light. David said, "Let me stand with you now, Maya. No more distance." Maya's eyes softened, but her voice held quiet steel. Maya said, "If you falter again, David, I won't have the strength to rise with you." David stepped closer, his reflection joining hers in the glass. For the first time, their shadows blended, fragile but undeniable, bound by a choice to keep trying. In the kitchen, the sound of boiling water hummed like a steady rhythm. Maya poured tea, her hands steady though her heart still ached. David sat at the table, watching her with eyes weighed down by regret and longing. Maya said, "You kept me hungry for love, David, but I still stand here." David's voice broke as he replied, "And I'll spend the rest of my life feeding what I starved." Maya set the teacup down in front of him, their hands brushing for a fleeting second. That touch carried more power than 2 years of silence, fragile but alive, trembling with possibility. Later that afternoon, Maya walked through the garden, the damp earth soft beneath her bare feet. David followed at a distance, his espresso skin glistening under sunlight. Maya said without turning, "You can't erase what's been done, David." David nodded, his voice quiet. David said, "I don't want to erase it. I want to heal with you, scar by scar." Maya turned, her braids swaying, her mahogany skin glowing under fading sunlight. Her gaze softened, though pain still lingered. Maya whispered, "Then don't just follow me. Walk beside me." David stepped closer, their footsteps finally aligning, fragile harmony in motion. Evening returned, casting the house in soft amber hues. Maya sat on the couch, her knees pulled close, her mahogany skin kissed by flickering candlelight. David sat across from her, his espresso skin shadowed, his eyes steady. Maya said, "We can't pretend the wounds aren't there." David leaned forward, his hands trembling. David said, "No, but we can hold them together." Maya's tears shimmered, her lips parting with a shaky breath. Maya said, "Then let's bleed together, David, until love grows again." The candle flame wavered, fragile but alive, like their hearts daring to beat in rhythm once more. The rain had stopped, leaving the night heavy with silence. Maya stood barefoot in the hallway, her braids damp against her mahogany skin, her silk robe clinging to her like a second layer of grief. David leaned against the wall, his espresso skin gleaming faintly in the weak lamplight, his eyes searching her face as though looking for a verdict. Maya said, "We've bled enough, David. Love isn't supposed to kill." David's jaw clenched, his chest rising with shaky breaths. David said, "But love isn't supposed to let go either." The hallway stretched long between them, filled with shadows and echoes of everything unsaid. Maya pressed her hand to the wall as if steadying herself. Maya said, "I don't know if forgiveness is enough. I don't know if trust can breathe again." David pushed away from the wall, his footsteps soft but heavy with weight. David said, "Then let me carry the scars, Maya. Let me hold the weight for both of us." Her lips parted, trembling, but no sound followed. The silence felt like the sharpest answer. Maya moved into the living room, candlelight flickering across her face, making her eyes look deeper than wounds. David followed, his steps hesitant, his voice hoarse from confessions that still lingered. Maya said, "Do you understand what you took from me, David? You stole my voice, my body, my right to be loved." David flinched, his espresso skin shadowed, his head bowing under her words. David said, "I see it now. And I hate the man I was." Maya's tears fell freely, catching the light, shimmering like broken glass. Maya said, "I wanted you to see me, not the ghost of her, not the shadow of your fear, just me, David. And you buried me alive in silence." David dropped to his knees, his voice cracking. David said, "I see you now, Maya, and I can't look away." The moment cracked like thunder, leaving the candle flame trembling as though it feared to die. The storm inside them found its peak when David reached for Maya's hand. His espresso-toned fingers trembled as they hovered, afraid to touch. Maya looked down, her braids falling forward, her mahogany skin glistening with sweat and tears. Maya whispered, 2 years I waited, David. 2 years of nights dying a little more." David's voice cracked as he said, "I know, Maya. I should have broken sooner. I should have fallen into you instead of running." Their hands brushed, electric and fragile, the smallest contact carrying the weight of years. Maya's tears fell onto his hand, a baptism of pain and memory. Maya said, "If I let you in now, there can be no walls again, no ghosts, no silence." David's voice shook, his chest trembling as he said, "I'll burn the walls. I'll kill the silence." In that vow, fragile and broken, lay the last chance for their survival. The hours bled together until the house fell silent once more. Maya lay on the couch, her braids spread across the cushion, her eyes staring at the ceiling. David sat on the floor beside her, his espresso skin glowing faintly in candlelight, his head resting near her hand. Maya whispered, "If love lives, it must crawl from the ashes, David." David nodded slowly, voice raw. David said, "Then let's rise with it, even if it scars us forever." Dawn arrived, painting the room in pale light. Maya stood near the window, her braids glowing faintly, her mahogany skin kissed by sunrise. David stood behind her, his espresso skin bathed in morning gold, his hands trembling as he reached toward her shoulder. Maya whispered, "This is your last chance, David. If silence ever returns, love will die with it." David's hand settled gently, his voice barely audible. David said, "Then silence will never live here again." The sun rose higher, burning away the night, but leaving shadows that would never fully fade.